Hey, World of Warcraft fans, at the beginning of this week, there was bad news from Microsoft. By next year, 3,200 jobs will be cut, possibly even more. First, 1,600 of those jobs will be cut, and the next 1,600 next year. And now, this lady here has commented on how all of this will affect Blizzard. Joanna Fares, who is the president of Blizzard, she spoke out in detail in an email, and we want to emphasize that first. It looks like Blizzard is relatively safe for the moment. And we'll look at the reasons why Blizzard isn't suffering as much from the cuts at Microsoft as, for example, the studios behind Elder Scrolls Online, which have to expect staff reductions of up to 50 employees. So we'll take a look at that. If you'd like to support me, there's a big summer lull right now. I would really appreciate it. Leave a like and most importantly, subscribe. It's free and helps me out a lot. And with that, let's go. Fairs already wrote in her email at the end of this week, so it was Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. And that's when she first reached out to her employees and said that she would share more details about the day's events and what they mean for Blizzard in further communications. At that moment, she just wanted to acknowledge that today is a difficult day, meaning the day the news came out, which affected many people in a terrible way, namely layoffs. I find it very, very interesting here because by saying that she will reach out again in the future, it's very clear that Blizzard has so far been relatively spared. We also saw other statements, for example, from the studio behind Elder Scrolls Online, who immediately announced that they would have to cut up to 50 staff members. They already know exactly what it's about and what's coming their way. If something like that were already certain for Blizzard, those numbers would probably already be circulating. Does that mean they're completely safe? Probably not, but for the moment, I'd say it's a decent sign. Unlike other studios, things haven't been cut back harshly there yet. We'll have to wait and see how that turns out in the end. At the same time, she thanks the Blizzard staff for how well they're working, so yes, some words of praise, and describes the current phase as a highly dynamic period. I think that's just media talk or corporate speak for, actually everything sucks right now, but we're still trying to put a positive spin on it somehow. And she also says, changes for Blizzard are not ruled out, but further details will follow. So far, so good. And here you really have to say, or I have to repeat myself, other studios already know exactly how many staff they have to cut, what will change. At Blizzard, they said the BlizzCon will take place and the initial plans will not change. That means for now, they have been spared from any immediate consequences. However, it must also be said that she expressed herself very cautiously in her statement, and I don't mean that as criticism, but it rather indicates that the overall picture is still unclear. So she didn't say, hey, this is what's coming for us, like cuts, nor did she say, hey, nothing will happen to us, you just don't know. And I have to say, I actually think her statement was well chosen because you just can't promise people anything right now if you don't know what's coming at you in the end. You have to be that clear. And to conclude, she also says that Blizzard is not untouchable, not even in this crisis. And she admits at the end, today, the day of the announcement, wasn't necessarily the worst day for her team, meaning for Blizzard itself. So that shows once again that other studios were hit much harder. But yeah, what does that mean in the end? Xbox, or rather, Microsoft said, to put it simply, that compared to competitors, they made much less revenue, got much less money. Employees are being laid off. Some studios are returning to new owners, some to their old ones. And they say that Xbox itself has also been completely restructured. According to the head of Xbox, they focused on projects while the core business simply didn't get the necessary attention, and they were simply spread too thin. And yes, in the end, they want to focus on IPs that are established, that generate strong revenue, and that bring them reliable money. And I think that's the safe bet for World of Warcraft here. So, like she already said, they've tried a lot of things, they've implemented many projects, but the core business, the bread and butter, the thing that brings in the money, that just hasn't really worked out. And here you have to say Microsoft has a very good foundation with Blizzard. No matter where you look, World of Warcraft is firmly established, Diablo is established, StarCraft, even though nothing new has come out for a long time, is established, just like Hearthstone. These are all IPs where you don't have to experiment much anymore, where you have thousands of players who bring the company a lot of money. So I think, like I said, this is just my personal assessment, but that's what ultimately protects Blizzard. On the other hand, if you had smaller studios that were supposed to try something new here and there and it flopped and didn't work out, Blizzard is a moneymaker for Microsoft. They bring in steady cash, you can see that too. Midnight had a very, very strong launch in terms of player numbers. There are always new items in the shop that apparently sell very, very well. And you just have a steady income here. So to start cutting away at the pillar that's actually bringing you quite a lot of money would, I think, be pretty dumb. It's also reported that behind the scenes, there are plans for Blizzard IPs, TV, film projects, and other things in the coming years. And Blizzard themselves have said this as well. They want to further expand the Warcraft IP. And I don't think they'd say something like that if they hadn't already heard from Microsoft behind the scenes. Yeah, we'd be open to that too. And honestly, it would be pretty stupid if Microsoft were to say now, yeah, okay, we'd like to have, I don't know, a WoW TV series or something, but first we're really going to break up the team and cut it by 50%. That's why I think the strong position of World of Warcraft and company really protected Blizzard here. Let's just hope that it stays that way in the future and that we won't have any major losses there. Because in the end, it's about real people, people who are losing their jobs. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And at the same time, of course, it's also the game that we all like. And I think it's fair to say a reduction of, I don't know, 50% of the staff or so probably won't have a positive effect on the quality of the game. Well, what do you think about it? Feel free to write it in the comments. And with that, thanks for watching. See you in the next video and take care.